내 뜻은 더 할게. This time I want you like it's magnetic, super good, like it's magnetic, super good, like it's
This year, I challenged myself to read at least 2 books every month so that by the end of the year, I'd have read at least 24 books. Obviously, it doesn't matter how many books one reads in a year, but I wanted to set a baseline to ensure that I kept reading something throughout the year. In my video titled When Dreams Start Becoming the Reality, I talked about how when life gets a little busy, we start to let go of the things we love doing in order to make more time. So I set the 2 book rule, keeping in mind that life will get busier, but I need to learn to prioritize things in life regardless of the circumstances, and it really paid off. I've completed a total of 36 books this year, which averages to around 3 per month, and I'm happy with that number. So, in this video, I want to talk about some of the books that really stuck with me, and I hope you find something to add to your read list, or simply just put this video on while you crochet or do some other craft. So, grab a beverage and a snack, and let's get started. This is my first book of 2024, and even though I read it almost 11 months back, I still haven't moved past it. This book revolves around game development while discussing some complex topics like friendship and platonic love. This book is set over a course of several decades and tells the story of Sam, Sadie, and Marks, who start developing a game from their apartment during their summer holiday break and end up developing a game that turns into a pop culture phenomena and eventually starting a game development company of their own called Unfair Games. I felt so close to all the characters in the book, especially Sam and Sadie. It might be a little scary to read a book that talks so much about gaming, but as someone who doesn't game at all, I didn't find it distracting at all. The author did such a good job of incorporating games into the plot and juxtaposing their lives with it. It is a long book, but not even a single page felt out of place, and sometimes it felt like I was growing with them. I felt the tone of sadness in the adulthood and that of intense passion for doing something they love during their late teens and early 20s. Fun fact, I actually got a little motivated by this book to really do something I love and start Yangu. Obviously, I didn't immediately start, but reading it did give me the midnight motivation that we sometimes have just before going to bed. There are 2 genres that really define the majority of my reading this year, and those would be Japanese literature and books that talk about opening bookshops. Days at the Morisaki bookshop brought both of them together into a bowl full of warmth that fed my soul. I started reading the first book at a time when I was just waiting around for life to happen. I didn't know what was next or what was I doing, and the protagonist of the book, Takako, finds herself in a similar situation after her boyfriend, who was engaged to someone else without her knowing, broke up with her and she decided to quit her job. Her uncle, Satoru, a bibliophile, inherited his father's second-hand bookshop and helped Takako love books by letting her stay in a small storeroom for books inside the bookshop and taking her help to run it as well. Although the book is small and I'd have loved to read more about her growing love for reading, this book really made me want to read more. I read Kafka on the Shore a few years back, and since reading it I've had this intense want to leave everything behind and move to a small town and open a bookshop or become a librarian. This book gave me similar vibes. I liked the first book more than the sequel because the second book talks a lot more about relationships existing outside the bookshop, but it did do a good job of giving me some closure as a reader. Obviously, I won't spoil the book for you, but the second book goes deeper into the stories of other characters, which makes the world building better and the characters more real. It is so hard to not relate to at least one person throughout the whole book. Another fun fact, I must have talked so much about liking this book that one of my friends gifted me the paperback. In the similar genre as before, but from a Korean author, Hyunamdong Bookshop is basically a Woodstock for people wanting to run away from their problems, whether it is a straight-A student who couldn't land a job after finishing college irrespective of how much he tried, a woman trying to find some low time after quitting her job by crocheting, or the owner's friend trying to navigate her troubled marriage, or the owner herself trying to mitigate the hurt of a separation that turned her life upside down. Even though the plot of the book doesn't actually move in time, the book's charm actually comes from how complex all the characters are and what exactly the bookshop means to them. Erins Diary is the official book for the series Dairy Girls, set in the 90s Dairy Island. Dairy Girls is a coming-of-age comedy cum commentary about what it is like to be a teenager during time of conflict between the Protestant government and Catholic minority, with armed police in armored Land Rovers and British Army checkpoints and bomb alarms that were so common that even the schools didn't close for them. Although set in a fictional plot, the series references some of the actual events that took place before the conflict was finally put to rest. Erin, the protagonist of the show, keeps a diary, and all the episodes start out with some of her monologues taken straight out of the diary, which is published as the official book. It is like a journal with half-torn tickets stuck to pages, names of friends that are no longer friends cut out, and every other small detail that makes up the adolescent time so conflicting. I'd suggest the show more than the actual book. You can always come back to the book after finishing the show to get some additional happenings of Erin's life, and I can definitely see why Dairy Girls is such a classic. Trigger warning: self-harm, depression, and suicide. Such a stark turn from Erins Diary to the Virgin Suicides. It was one of those books that I picked up purely on the basis of the cover, and I'm glad I did. This book is based on the life or rather death of the Lisbon sisters who took their lives. My interpretation of the book might be wrong, but I think they killed themselves because of how controlling their mother was with their lives, which they didn't even really get to enjoy because their parents, especially their mother, had such a myopic point of view of freedom and religion. They were individual human beings who had multitudes within them and so many dreams that they only got to see behind their glass panes, and when they finally decided to rebel, they went too far away. What really enraged me was their mother saying that she had no idea why they would kill themselves when she was the one controlling their lives like an army general. The whole book is narrated from the perspective of We, which is basically a group of boys who were the Lisbon's neighbors and were obsessed with the girls, so much so that their deaths left a permanent mark on their lives, and even as adults they had to return and get some answers about their lives. I think there's a very well written comparison done between the elm trees that marked the neighborhood and the Lisbon girls. The trees in the neighborhood were infected with the Dutch elm disease that spreads to other trees through the water system. This felt like an analogy to confirm what the neighbors thought of the suicide all along. According to them, the first sister's suicide spread a virus that ultimately consumed all the other sisters, the same way all the elm trees in the neighborhood had to be chopped down if even one got infected. The writing is so beautiful and at times so difficult to decode. The book has less than 200 pages but took me so long to complete because sometimes I had to reread the same passage so many times to understand it. Lisbeth's sisters were seen as a unit, and staying true to that, I don't necessarily have a favorite character because I don't think each sister was introduced enough to the reader other than Lux. Would definitely recommend it if you don't get triggered by self-harm. Taking another pivot to this beautiful and heartwarming story about Vera Wang, not to be confused with the infamous fashion designer Vera Wang, a 60-year-old Chinese owner of Vera Wang's world-famous tea house in San Francisco's Chinatown, who is an expert at being an Asian mom and also a true detective at heart. After she wakes up to a murder in her tea house that the cops dusted off as an accident, this story brings together a group of broken people who were, in some way, broken down by the dead man lying in Vera Wong's tea house, whether it be his twin brother, his wife, an engineer trying to make ends meet so that he can give his younger brother quality education, or an aspiring artist stuck in limbo with her art. This is definitely a feel-good book if you don't take into account how manipulative the dead man was when he was alive and just how many lives he single-handedly ruined. You will definitely find Vera imposing at times, but by the end of the book, you'll adore her to oblivion. I would suggest this book to those who are in a reading slumber and want to read something light or just want to kick off the reading era. I don't read a lot of thriller and suspense, but this year I tried reading some and No Exit was the one that stuck with me. The plot, the writing, the pace, everything was just perfect. On the way home to Utah to see her sick mother, a college student, Darby Thorne, is stranded by a blizzard at a highway rest stop in the Colorado Rockies. With roads impassable, she is forced to wait out the storm and the rest stop with no cell phone reception. There are some vending machines inside, a coffee maker, and 4 complete strangers. Desperate to find a signal to call home, Darby goes back out into the storm and discovers a little girl locked in a metal animal crate in the back of the van parked next to her car. There is no way to call for help and no way out, and the only thing she knows is that one of her fellow travelers in this isolated rest stop is a kidnapper. This book has a movie adaptation as well, but that's the worst thing that could have happened to this book. They cut off so many good parts from the movie, and the whole ambience of the movie is completely off, at least from what I imagined it to be while I was reading the book. For example, in the book, the author goes to great lengths to describe how dark and obsidian the whole atmosphere of the rest stop is, but in the movie, it is showed as a cozy cabin. The writing is so good, and unfortunately it did not get translated well enough in the movie, so stay away from that, but do give this book a read. If you are a long-term viewer, then you might remember I made a video where I mentioned this book. To be very honest, I might have mentioned this book in multiple videos because of how good it was. Definitely a lengthy one, but it's one of those books that feels like an investment. A semi-autobiographical book inspired by all the departed souls that Bronnie took care of as a palliative caretaker. She describes about her nomad and minimalist lifestyle and how she made ends meet by working as a caretaker and house sitter. Every person she cared for taught her something valuable. According to her, everyone on their deathbeds had some common regrets about the life that they had lived, and putting everything together, she gave us this book, The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying, which are: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. I wish that I had let myself be happier. So these were some of my top reads this year. I have already added some more books to my TBR, but if you have some recommendations, then let me know them as well. And also let me know some of your top reads for 2024. We'll be holding space for all the genres and wouldn't be judging unless it's Colleen Hoover. I absolutely loved making all these bouquets, and it warms my heart to know that I vicariously was involved in other people's celebration. Thank you for every single like, comment, subscribe, and view. And I don't take any of that for granted. I just wanted to put it out there. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let's meet again soon and have a very happy new year.